This is a review of the Project Extension 10 turntable, and there's a couple of reasons I wanted to have a closer look at this particular model. The first reason is most people will see the brand Project and they will think of either budget or low cost or relatively low cost turntables, the likes of the Essentials series or the Debut series, that kind of thing. The Extension 10 is £3,000 worth of turntable, hardly low cost and hardly budget. And if you add the very attractive wooden burl finish, you're going to add another £350 on top of that price, so £3,350, and that's the one I grabbed for review, incidentally. Now, because most people will see Project as a sort of budget producer of turntables, those same people will miss out on the more expensive models. They will miss out on Project's really nice work in the mid and upper turntable price range design. So part of the reason for doing this review is to shine a light and bring awareness to the work that Project does in this particular sector, this higher end sector. There is a second reason that I wanted to look at the Extension 10, but we'll get to that in a second. Now, when I received my review sample of the Extension 10, it didn't turn up in a little courier van, as these things tend to do. Oh no, this one turned up via a massive articulated lorry in a gigantic crate. It looked and weighed an absolute ton, a massive thing. So I wondered why they used the crate at all. According to Project, it said two things. First, to 100% protect it in transit, our crate will stand any house move or shipment. Also, cardboard boxes with a turntable of this weight will fail after one go. Second, we want our turntable to feel special. And it does. As soon as you open the crate, it all looks rather lovely even before you've taken it out. And I did take everything out the crate. Setup was pretty quick. The arm was already in place. I had to add the platter, basic stuff like that. I had to add a few feet underneath the plinth, but there wasn't a great deal to do. And one of the main things that you do notice when you have the turntable set up on your shelf is at the near right. It's a little control panel with a little window and some buttons. The buttons allow start and stop. They also allow inherent speed changes, plus or minus 0.1 RPM, which can be of use. There is a third speed available, 78 RPM is included, but you don't select it via these little buttons. You have to go to the pulley, you have to move the belt to a different part of the pulley to access 78 RPM. Now, as you're looking at the front of the turntable, the pulley is at the far left. That's also where the AC motor is. Above that is a top plate. You need to remove the top plate to access the pulley. This is screwed down by silver coloured knobs. I actually wondered if this plate did anything, and so I asked Project, and it replied that it's primarily cosmetic, but it's also there to minimize the at-risk space where an exterior belt leaves the platter to touch the pulley. There's almost zero chance of accidentally knocking our drive belt off, said the company. Once that pulley rotates and the belt hauls the massive platter around, you may want to grab a coffee while the thing gets up to speed. Why? Well, because it's a slow increment in terms of speed. Project used quite a large platter, so to get this heavy piece of material to spin takes a bit of effort and a little bit of time. You might want to encourage it with a bit of a spin using your hand. That will help the motor a little bit. Again, I asked Project about this and it said it's a low torque motor to minimize any unwanted noise generated within the turntable. We found the startup comparable to other high mass designs. So what does Project mean by using a low torque motor and wanting to avoid noise? Now, the great thing about a direct drive design is the amount of torque it employs on the motor and also on the platter. If you've ever used the Technics 1200 direct drive turntable, you'll see this effect. The turntable gets up to speed very quickly indeed. Now, the downside of having this high torque motor is that an awful lot of energy is piled into this platter because it's forcing this platter around. It's using an awful lot of energy to do this. Once all this energy has been generated, it's got to go somewhere. And what happens? It tends to go into the actual platter, and then it can go anywhere from that point. A lot of it can go into the arm, into the cartridge. All of these items are infused with noise. It actually does harm, to some extent, sound quality. And this is why some direct drive designs out there, some audiophile direct drive designs, are actually low torque direct drive motors. Now, this is a belt drive system, but this is why Project want to keep that torque back. They sort of back off on the torque. And so their intention is, as they say, when you turn on this turntable, the belt just eases that platter around. It doesn't want to infuse the platter, and it's a big thick thing. It doesn't want to infuse it with too much energy. It doesn't want that energy hanging about. So it's gentle. So just be a little bit patient. If you do grab this particular turntable, be a little bit patient and realize that the slow build-up of speed actually benefits sound quality. So it's doing you a favor. It may take a few more seconds, but it's doing you a favor. Now, this is also a good time to talk about the suspension system, which is a combination of mass above and suspension below. The feet are described as maglev, MAG-LEV. And basically, the feet are separated into two bits, separated by magnetism. They both repel each other, but the feet are held in place by a bolt. Leveling is still possible using the feet alone. I asked Project about their thought processes behind the suspension design decisions, and it told me, in essence, all Project turntables take the view of what is best for a wider customer base as possible. We tend to find most people can accommodate mass designs, but less can accommodate decoupled designs. But we wanted to utilize aspects of both. So our turntable has floating elements using magnets to do two things: reduce the load on the feet, that's why our feet have strong opposing magnets, and reduce the pressure on the main bearing. That's why the main bearing has magnets around it. So because the Extension 10 doesn't use a complex spring system, you can put the turntable just about anywhere. The Project High Mass Platter uses something called a perpetual motion system. I asked Project about this as well, and it said that this particular system makes speed stability amongst the best for high-end belt designs. Even our mass block around the tone arm bearing has proven over many years to take away vibrations from the arm tube. If you ever do install the Extension 10 yourself, you'll find in the crate a stabilizer, quite a heavy thing. Now, I call it a stabilizer, and it is a stabilizer, but Project call it a clamp, even though it's not a clamp. So basically, I wondered, why include this thing at all? And the reason I was confused was because the Extension 10 is a heavy, massy turntable. It uses mass and bulk to get rid and to drain away an awful lot of high frequency noise and vibration and the like. So I thought the stabilizer stroke clamp was a bit of an overkill, sitting on top of the spindle as it would, because the idea of a stabilizer is to remove vibrations around the bearing. That's why it sits over the spindle. It actually helps to settle the bearing, a bit like you taking an indigestion tablet to settle your tummy. The stabilizer performs the same sort of task on the bearing, which is right underneath it. According to Project, it's included because, and I quote, "This again is included to support a wide variety of customers, many of whom believe a clamp enhances bass and mitigates timing issues on warped records. The rest of our turntable design can do nothing for people of this belief, so we include it as an optional accessory." Well, we'll see if it's worth it in the sound tests a bit later on. The tone arm is a 10-inch CC Evolution model with a carbon fibre tube. It has an inverted bearing and a Lin type mount, and you can set the VTA and the azimuth with this arm, no problem at all. And the actual arm itself is installed on the turntable when you buy it. In addition to that, there are four counterweights that sit at the rear of the tone arm. This is slightly unusual, and I did ask Project why they supplied four. Most people don't. Most companies give you one, and then if you've got some weird and wonderful cartridge that needs more weight, you can call the manufacturer and it will send you a special extra weight to put on the back of the arm and you're away. Most companies don't give you four as a basic default. Once more, I asked Project why they did this. And I said, was it necessary? And they said, we feel yes. If you look at most plug-and-play designs supplied with a cartridge, the counterweight is as near to the gimbal as possible. This reduces strain on the counterweight rod, which can cause vibrations to manifest as the arm tracks. As we want customers through our dealer to choose the right cartridge for the deck, we supply 4 counterweights inside the package so you can pick the weight with your cartridge that sits nearest the bearing. As a spare part, these counterweights are less than £20 each, so the added value to the package is marginal when you consider the at-home options a customer has and the ability it gives them to change their cartridge in the future. So what Project is saying is, look, we'll give you 4 counterweights to stick on the back of your arm. In the future, it doesn't really matter what sort of cartridge. It can be amazingly strange and wonderful or weird or basic. Your choice, but whatever one you choose, you've got a counterweight to fit. So you're not going to have any issues and you're not going to be tearing your hair out because your cartridge is too light or too heavy or whatever. You'll have a weight on the back of your arm to cope with whatever the situation. Ultimately, I think it's a great idea. I wasn't that pleased with the manual though, I must admit. I thought it was too wordy, there were not enough exploded diagrams, not enough hand-holding images, just too text-heavy to be helpful. Again, I asked Project about this and it did say that it would change the manual in the future, so good news on that. Now, the Extension 10 has been tweaked and modified from its original form, so now you can have, in terms of finish, a deep, high-gloss finish in addition to the normal satin finish. But possibly the main reason I wanted to review the Extension 10 at all was because it now features a brand new power supply, external model that is. This power supply is already in existence as a model to be bought on its own as an individual thing. It's called the RS Uni TT. It retails on its own at $399, but Project are bundling this $399 power supply with the Extension 10 for free. You're basically getting an upgraded power supply worth £400 for nothing. Part of the original Power Box range, this is a DC motor and consists of a toroidal transformer with shielding between the primary and secondary winding, which acts as an isolating transformer. The built-in transformer has, according to Project, much higher power reserve compared to standard power adapters. Now, when I did the sound tests, and I'm going to come to that now, I used, to begin with, the turntable's original switch mode power supply. Then I brought in the new power supply, the new upgraded £400 model, and I did some further sound tests using that power supply, and then I could compare A to B. Firstly, I brought in a little bit of jazz, and I could hear just a slight emphasis in the mid-range. There was no brightness at all here, but the mid-range had been lifted by a single degree perhaps, but lifted just enough to add a hint of coolness on the vocal and the light upon the trumpet solo. Again, there was nothing nasty here, but the vocal was lifted ever so slightly. Now, on the positive side, you could say that this slight emphasis added a little bit of detail, a little bit of light and shade, a little bit of subtlety, a little bit of nuance. Now, on the other side of the coin, yes, there was more detail, yes, there was a little bit of light and shade, but you could hear the vocal travelling towards being bright. It never got there, it was never bright, but you could see, you could hear that the voice was getting there. It wasn't that far away. If it carried on, it would have hit that point. The voice was shy of being bright, but the emphasis was in that direction. Now, the fact that I can describe the vocal in fractions of a degree like this is a sort of testament to the performance of the Extension 10 itself. It's a testament to the price too, of course. This is a sort of conversation you can employ when you have £3,000 in your back pocket. Nevertheless, the Extension 10 was quite daring in its frequency approach. It took chances and walked along the sonic cliff edge at times. Then I brought in some rock, and it was very solid, very bassy, quite massy, quite hefty in terms of bass. Mid-range and treble were quite well defined, quite exacting. And in terms of noise, well, for £3,000, this is what I would expect to hear. Nothing to really make me celebrate, nothing to make me sort of wave my arms above my head, but it was fine. So I thought to myself, now's the time to bring in this extra free upgraded power supply. Let's see what that can do. Once the new power supply was in place, it was at this point that the slight emphasis and the mid-range coolness went away. So you can now point at the switch mode power supply for that effect, because the new external power supply replaced that with, well, a sort of rich confidence and a sense of weight that was attractive indeed. On the Jazz LPs, what I noticed were extra vocal nuances. So the new power supply handled vocal transitions well. On the left channel, a string section, for example, largely dismissed by the ear previously, now pushed forward and swept into view with a fully detailed harmonic presence that only served to enhance the overall soundstage. Bass was excellent, powerful and full of weight, never dominant, but absolutely there, adding less obvious power, but plenty of portent and, when required, precision to emphasize a point in the arrangement. Treble provided a lovely contrast to the trumpet arrangements, being delicate and full of information, while the trumpet solo itself was tonally balanced now. The upper mids found it easier to track the quick changes in notational scale as the player's fingers moved to the music. So while in jazz the new power supply brought extra emotion and information to the soundstage and to the general presentation, when I started to play the rock track, it just added more fun. The Extension 10 really relaxed into this music, offering a rolling bass, but the inherent clarity that sat alongside meant that no detail was lost. Lead guitar was complex and rather delightful. Vocals were a joy to hear, low tones never blending or blurring into the mid-range, while percussion remained a linchpin to the entire track on many of these LPs. That the music triggered head bobbing, foot tapping and arm swishing was a testament to the Extension 10 as a source. Frankly, the new external power supply changed the entire personality of the Extension 10 turntable, and for the better. So the new power supply is an absolute winner, hands down. But what of the stabilizer? This is where I thought I would test that. So I popped the stabilizer over the central spindle, and I wasn't particularly happy. I gotta say, I don't think you need the stabilizer. If you were using the stabilizer with the earlier switch mode power supply, the stabilizer may have stabilized the sound, adding a bit more control, for example. With the new power supply, which fixes all of that anyway, the stabilizer pushes it too far to the detriment of the music, so it dulls the music, it rolls off the mid-range. You're actually losing information when you put the stabilizer on. So I would take it off and I would use it as a paperweight. So in conclusion, well, it comes down to this. The Extension 10 plus switch mode power supply was a good turntable. With the new power supply in place, the Extension 10 is now an excellent turntable. Simple as that. With the new power supply in place, the Extension 10 is now a serious contender in this price point. It now has a new maturity and a new level of control it never had before. Whether you're talking clarity, bass control, tonal balance, these are all being enhanced via the addition of this new power supply. In my opinion, do yourself a favour, and if you've got the cash, if you're after a new turntable at this price point, you've got to check it out. And that, my friends, is that. I will see you hopefully in the next video. Until then, bye bye for now.